So, now that the Assad regime is purportedly overthrown in Syria, should we really expect all those Syrian refugees to rush back home? The Syrian government is practically begging them to return, but will they heed the call? Or have they grown too comfortable soaking up Canadian tax dollars instead? Buckle up as we plunge headfirst into this controversial issue. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's resettlement program is a failure. A startling new study from Statistics Canada sheds light on the alarming realities facing Syrian refugees who arrived in Canada as government-assisted refugees under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's ambitious resettlement program. Titled The Short-Term Labor Market Outcomes of Blended Visa Office-Requested Refugees, this analysis by Yasmin Goureh and Feng Hao paints a bleak picture of integration and economic stability, revealing that government-assisted refugees represent a particularly vulnerable population within Canada's immigration framework. According to the research, a staggering 42.3% of the 2014 cohort of Syrian refugees, all aged between 15 and 54, remained dependent on social assistance 6 years after setting foot on Canadian soil. This dependence is not just a fleeting issue. It underscores systemic challenges that persist even years post-resettlement, raising serious questions about the effectiveness of the integration strategies in place. The situation appears to be deteriorating rather than improving. The influx of 2015 arrivals, coinciding with the Liberal government's flagship Operation Syrian Refugee, reveals an even grimmer reality. 50.4% of these refugees were reliant on social assistance just 5 years after arrival. This is not merely a statistic. It represents thousands of individuals and families caught in a cycle of dependency. Even worse, the 2016 cohort, while the resettlement efforts were still in full swing, saw a jaw-dropping 69.5% of government-assisted refugees reporting ongoing reliance on social assistance a mere 4 years after their arrival in Canada. Such figures highlight a troubling trend. The government's efforts, rather than facilitating successful integration, are leaving a large number of refugees stranded in a system designed to support them, yet ultimately failing to empower them. Taxpayer dollars fund the resettlement of government-assisted refugees, a stark contrast to private sponsorship programs where the financial burden is shouldered by individual sponsors. This disparity raises a critical question. Are we truly investing in the future of these refugees, or merely perpetuating a cycle of reliance on public funds? The consequences are significant. The socio-economic costs extend beyond the individuals affected. Taxpayers are footing the bill without seeing corresponding returns in community integration or economic contribution. Moreover, the stark demographic breakdown reveals that refugees hailing from Western Asia, particularly the significant surge of Syrian refugees, are disproportionately represented among those resorting to social assistance. In 2016, a staggering 81.6% of this population was identified as being from Western Asia, a clear indication of the complexity and potential shortcomings embedded within the resettlement processes. But wait, there's more. The study's findings compel us to scrutinize the screening and selection processes for refugees more critically. Why are certain groups struggling significantly more than others? Are there insufficient resources allocated for social integration? Furthermore, an additional report from Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada reveals that the government-assisted refugee class exhibits the lowest labor market participation rate. Only 56% of these individuals are actively participating in the Canadian economy, encompassing those who are working, seeking employment, or anticipating starting work soon. This highlights a grave disconnect between resettlement promises and actual socio-economic outcomes. As we consider the refugee resettlement framework in Canada, particularly for this vulnerable Syrian cohort, we are faced with uncomfortable truths about the systems meant to support them. The real story is not just about numbers. It's about human lives, potential, and the urgent need for more effective integration strategies that empower rather than entrap. The glaring issues raised by this study call for immediate action and accountability from the Canadian government to ensure that the resettlement process evolves into a truly supportive pathway towards independence and prosperity for refugees. What incentive do they have to return to Syria and help rebuild the place they once called home while soaking up the benefits they enjoy here in Canada? Why would they lift a finger for their home country when they can exploit Canadian tax dollars funding their stay? After all, didn't they come to Canada as refugees fleeing danger? Now that the threat is past, are they really considering going back? When I say they're indulging in a life of luxury here in Canada, fully funded by Canadian tax dollars, while the real Canadians, those born and raised, are desperately fighting to put food on the table and a roof over their heads, I mean it. I visited a food bank just last week, and the scene I encountered there was infuriating and downright revolting. There were 4 Syrian refugees, let's not kid ourselves. I know this because I overheard their language and were in one of the prime spots that welcomed them. pulling up in a shiny 2025 sedan, still flaunting the sale papers plastered on the window. One woman strutted around in a full-body puffy coat that probably cost more than $2,000, while the rest were dressed in high-end footwear. And the driver? He looked like he'd raided a jewelry store with thick gold chains hanging around his neck. As they loaded their car, they laughed like it was all a game, casually carting off 5 boxes of food meant for those genuinely in need. The rest of the people in the lineup stared in utter disgust. It was an outrageous spectacle, reminiscent of those news clips showcasing brazen thieves looting stores with no regard for consequences. Pure selfishness, all at the expense of struggling food banks and the hard-earned tax dollars of Canadians. And there we stood, forced to swallow our outrage, suppressing the thoughts swirling in our minds lest we be labeled as racists. The very card they wield like a shield, allowing them to escape accountability, is why this disgrace continues unabated. As we dissect the ongoing narrative around Syrian refugees in Canada, one must question the sustainability of the current system and the implications of prolonging dependency. The glaring issues revealed by the statistics are not merely numbers, they encapsulate a profound reality for both refugees and Canadian citizens alike. Are we truly providing a refuge that empowers or merely enabling a cycle of reliance that fuels resentment? With the Assad regime seemingly stabilized, the burning question persists. Should the Syrian refugees rethink their positions in Canada? Is it time for them to return, harness their strengths, and contribute to rebuilding their homeland? As the safety and stability in Syria improve, why not turn the page on this chapter and foster growth back home? We invite you to share your thoughts on this pressing issue. What do you think about the situation surrounding Syrian refugees? Is it time for them to return to Syria, or should they remain in Canada? Join the conversation in the comments below and let your voice be heard. And while you're at it, hit that like button. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, it would be great if you would add yourself to the channel. See you in the next video.